Well, I mean, clearly, as has been reported in social media, there was an awful lot of people not keeping to the social distancing requirements of 2 metres.
When you say an awful lot of people, the images that were shared on social media were from one particular area on Friday in Chatham Counterguard, but then we've since heard from the Gibraltar Catering Association saying that that hasn't been the case with other areas. So can you corroborate that, or have you found that other establishments in other areas have also not adhered to those social distancing rules?
It's variable. I think it depends. It depends on the day, it depends on the time, and it depends on the area. So, clearly, things that were just opening up had an exuberance, an over-exuberance of visitors, and they did keep to social distancing at the start. It's really difficult to do that once a few drinks have flown, I suspect.
Well, as Director of Public Health, you have the power to withdraw those permits. Have you had to withdraw anyone's permits?
I'm considering it. So it's something that may well happen. I think until people realise that there's teeth behind these regulations, they perhaps may not take the permits and the withdrawal process seriously.
So how does the revocation of the permits work? Do you give them a warning? Is there a sort of a strikeout system?
Yes, so we will issue them with a rectification notice. I think some places have already received that, and if they continue to transgress, we will remove the permit.
Going back to the Chatham Counterguard incident on Friday evening, the Environmental Agency has told GBC that it's not their remit to police large gatherings, and the RGP have also said that it's not their remit to police social distancing rules within leisure areas. So whose remit is it? Who is monitoring and policing large crowd gatherings at restaurants?
So we often want to pass on the responsibility to everyone else. I mean, fundamentally, of course, it is the people that own these venues and the people that run them that are fundamentally responsible for abiding by the permit conditions. However, we've got to remember that the reason we're doing this is to protect our grandparents. So actually it's a shared responsibility by everybody. I'm talking about people sending their kids out to socialise, I'm talking about people who socialise, I'm talking about the grandparents that meet their grandchildren. And at the end of the day, what we suffered for the last few months was to protect our grandparents. We don't want to throw that away, so it's a shared responsibility.
Are you saying that that is not going to be policed or monitored by anyone, that it's up to individual responsibility then? Because the net result of that was that everybody, all the other restaurants who have been complying, some of them have been complying, now find themselves subject to a midnight curfew. So is that fair?
So, it can't be a policing. We're not a police state. We do everything by consent, and the consent was, as was stated in the past, every single life matters to us. Just because we've got 0 cases doesn't mean that this is over, and I do want to get that across to people.
So, Dr Bhatti, the midnight curfew presumably was on your advice, and did you take into consideration all the other establishments when you made that decision?
I think we have to give some signal that actually there are limits and what is safe and what is not safe. And, certainly it's a group effort. It's advice from myself, it's working with the police, it's working with the Environment Agency. Obviously the politicians have a viewpoint here, the owners of the businesses have a perspective on it. At the end of the day, we want things to go back to as normal as we can make it, but there's no point in doing it if we've thrown away the gains of the last 4 or 5 months.
Bars will possibly be reopening on the 22nd of June. Can you explain the decision not to allow them to open this week, particularly as we've seen very few cases of COVID. In fact, at the time of this interview, no cases now. So why the decision to open on the 22nd? And obviously bars are more intimate affairs than restaurants. So what sort of rules will you be applying to the bars when they do open?
We wanted to see what the effect of the freedom that we were giving restaurants was and to see how it panned out. And we always said in the document that there would be lots of time for review and reflection. So I'm glad that we did, in actual fact, because it allowed us to see behaviours that actually did happen at the end of the day, and we've taken account of that in the guidance that we've provided. So in effect, in bars, people will not be served unless they're seated, and they will reduce the capacity by 50%, and we will ask people to observe the 2-metre rule unless they're facing away from each other where the space is a little bit less.
The government has said that it's constantly reviewing the situation. It takes advice from yourself. So could you possibly be thinking about bringing forward the next phase, which is on the 29th of June? It allows for larger gatherings because there are no COVID cases at the moment. And also, would you consider bringing forward Rock Unlocked on the 1st of August?
My considered advice on this actually is that we continue to be in an environment where there is risk. We're surrounded people by places with more risk than we have. I would continue to exercise caution in our approach, but I have to emphasise we will not go back to the pre-COVID normality we were used to, because we have not defeated COVID in the world.
Let me just get some clarity on what you've just said. So Rock Unlocked is on the 1st of August. Does that mean that after that, restaurants can go and bars can go to 100% capacity and not necessarily have to observe the social distancing rule? In other words, go back to trading the way that they were trading pre-COVID. Is that what's going to happen on the 1st of August?
I think we'll have to review it at that time. I think that is contextual based on what cases there are around. I think, and this is something that is coming across, I hope, increasingly across the world, is that we will have to have some form of new normality with social distancing. What exactly that means in terms of social distancing, evidence continues to emerge.
So even if our cases remain at 0 or very, very low, let's say under 10, come 1st of August, you're not saying that restaurants are necessarily going to open to full capacity again at that point. It's something that you still need to think about, is it?
Yeah, I would. So what would be the point of having gone through all the pain that we've gone through from February, March, April, May and now June, if we were to throw it all away? Because I don't believe that the virus has gone away either from Spain or from North Africa or from Britain. The possibility of a second wave exists. It's already emerged in places like Singapore. We're hearing about it re-emerging in China. So we're going to have sporadic incursions, and unless and until we are either 80% vaccinated against it, and we have a very active contact tracing ability, we are going to have to remain vigilant.
So can you give us an indication when you'll be in a position to be able to make that decision about bars and restaurants at the 1st of August? When will you be able to give an indication as to whether they can or can't open to full capacity?
We're doing a day-by-day review, so it's not a question of we ignore it and then come back and have a look at it again. I mean, ultimately, it's a political decision. You know, I'm here to advise the government on what I think would be a reasonable way to address the risks, and it's always at the end of the day, it's a legislative and enabling political decision that needs to be made. So I would provide my advice on the basis of the risk profile. Politicians obviously have their own networks and pressures, and on that basis a decision will be made. My job, my primary job, is to protect, just as it is for the politicians, I'm protecting the health of the people of Gibraltar and the lives of the people of Gibraltar, and I will make a decision based on my professional knowledge and experience.